What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg, and we just got done watching another dominating Detroit Pistons win over the New York Knicks, 126-111. On the season, the Pistons have beat the Knicks all three times in dominating fashion, and all three times, believe it or not, tonight was the closest game they've had so far. I'm going to let you know up front, we are having thunderstorms where I live right now, so if you hear a loud bang, it's either my house coming down from lightning or it's Cade Cunningham banging another three in Jeremy Sochan's face. This was a dominating performance, but it was highly impressive by the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons, who have the best record in the entire NBA, even over the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, we know they won the NBA championship last year. It looked like they were maybe going at the beginning of the year, it looked like they had a chance to break the all-time wins record. But right now, the best record in the league is held by the Pistons. And this was obviously the series that we saw in the playoffs last year between the Pistons and the Knicks, that the Knicks won in Game 7, a series that really could have gone either way. But it was pretty impressive last year to see this young, up-and-coming Pistons team really hold their own with a Knicks team that had spent a lot of money and done a lot of deals to feel like they were in win-now mode. And this year, it just looks like the Pistons are on another level. Tonight, we saw what I would consider to be an MVP performance out of Cade Cunningham in Madison Square Garden. We know that this is a legendary place to play where the best players often rise to the occasion of playing in the Garden. And Cade Cunningham tonight had 42 points, 13 assists, and 8 rebounds. He also added 2 blocks and a steal because that's what Cade and the Pistons do. They're elite on the defensive end of the court. So this game started. The Pistons started the game 1 for 10 from the field. And, just was a shaky start. But the Pistons went on to win every single quarter. The first quarter they won by 2, second quarter by 8, third quarter by 1, and fourth quarter by 4 points. They dominate this Knicks team in almost every facet of the game of basketball. I think this is a great matchup for the Pistons in general because they have the ability to defend a guy like Jalen Brunson with big guards and Cade Cunningham and Asar Thompson. Oh, I forgot to mention, tonight the Pistons didn't even have Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. The Knicks were without Miles McBride, but we know Jalen Duren just made the All-Star game, and Isaiah Stewart has been a big piece of this Pistons team for the year. Before we get into the rest of it, make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel. We just hit 1,300 subscribers. We are grinding NBA content now that the All-Star break is over, heading into the back half of the season. We're so excited as we approach the playoffs. So what was kind of interesting about tonight's game was the Pistons, obviously Cade Cunningham played out of his mind, which we know he does. But Paul Reed was probably the second best player in this game. He had 18 points, 7 rebounds on 7 of 9 from the field, which was huge for a Pistons team that was depleted in obviously their big men. We know the Pistons are number 1 in the NBA in defensive rating. We know that they're number 1 in the NBA in both steals, blocks, and fouls. What I love about this squad is the physicality they play with. I do not mind you being number 1 in the league in fouls if you're leading the league in those other categories, because you know the teams hate to play the Detroit Pistons because they're going to beat you up for 4 quarters. D. Wade on the broadcast was talking about how much he noticed that the Pistons just love to play defense. And they really press ball handlers. And this is such a good matchup for the Pistons because, like I said, obviously Jalen Brunson played a very good game tonight. Let me get his final stat line real quick just so I get it right. Had 33, 8, and 6, but he also had 6 turnovers. We know Jalen Brunson's a stud basketball player. But the Knicks primarily, obviously have Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, but the Pistons are able to, really defend that about as good as you can because Jalen Duren's such a high-level player, really on both ends of the court, but defensively for sure. And then Cade defends at a high level. Asar Thompson defends at a high level. And then Tobias Harris, we know at the 3, is a versatile defender and has been a good player in this league for a long time, even though, tonight he kind of struggled. He's 4 of 16 from the field. Asar Thompson had 10 points. Duncan Robinson had 9. Javonte Green, 9. Karis LeVert, 8. Dennis Jenkins, 8. Ron Holland, 7. And Tolu Smith had 4. So we got to see a lot of guys contribute for this Pistons team. And what we've noticed the last few years in the NBA is that there's a team that really starts the season. Well, they might start the season with some hype, but as the season goes on, we're quickly learning that they're the best team in basketball. And I think we saw this a few years ago from that Denver Nuggets team, that first year they won the championship. And then we saw it from the Boston Celtics 2 years ago when we thought they were going to be really good. And you're watching them throughout the season. You're like, holy smokes, this team is incredible. And they went on to win the finals pretty easily. And then we saw the Thunder last year really take that step forward as a young team. They had a little bit of playoff experience. They took a huge jump. I absolutely believe that the team this year that could take that jump could be this Detroit Pistons team. And it absolutely has been so far in the season. When you look at the Eastern Conference landscape, you have to feel great as a Pistons fan. Right now, in my opinion, it comes down to two teams that I would imagine in the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, depends on seeding. We'll see what happens there. But the Pistons and the Cavs. The Cavs added James Harden, and they've won every single game since. They won again tonight. So they're a very good basketball team. But this Pistons team has been unbelievable, and they're really good both sides of the ball. They're 10th in the league in scoring. They're 3rd in the league in rebound percentage, 7th in rebounds overall, number 2 in defensive rating and net rating. And then obviously, like I said, number 1 in both steals, blocks, and fouls. They do so many things well, but you have this young team with this rising superstar in Cade Cunningham that I think is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. And you'd be shocked, or you would not be shocked at all to see this team playing in the NBA Finals. And once you get there, you always have it, you never know what's going to happen. So I'm so excited to watch the rest of this season. And what I love about the Pistons, and it's kind of unique, it's sometimes what we see in sports that is pretty exciting, is that certain cities and certain franchises feel like when they're successful, it's always for a certain reason. And for the Pistons, obviously we know they were great in the 80s with Isaiah Thomas and that physicality. Then 2004, they won another NBA championship with Chauncey Billups and, so much defense. They were one of the better defensive teams of all time. And then this year again, obviously they have another great point guard like Chauncey, like Isaiah Thomas, now Cade Cunningham. But defensively, they are so effective and so fun to watch. They fly around, they switch well, and they just make it so difficult to play against for the opposing team. So they really take on the culture, I think, of Detroit with that physicality and that toughness. And when you see, like I said, when you see a successful Pistons team, it always kind of has some similarities in the way that it looks. And that's no different with this team this year. I think that Cade Cunningham should right now be very high in the MVP discussion. And I'm actually quickly going to look up his where he ranks as far as like on FanDuel. But we know that Shea, I believe, is right now number 1, and Jokic. Both of those guys have missed a lot of games, and Shea's still currently hurt. So especially if those guys are out, I don't know how you can make a good argument that Cade Cunningham is not the MVP of this league because, like I said, number 1 record in the entire NBA. So Cade right now, he is 3rd. He's 3rd in the rankings after Shea and Jokic. So number 1 record in the entire NBA, gets it done on both ends of the court. They're really good on the road. They're really good at home. I think they have 2nd best road record in the NBA and obviously best record in the NBA. But this is an MVP type moment to go into the Garden, have 42 points, 13 assists, 8 rebounds coming out of the All-Star break. And obviously Cade was one of the guys who played pretty hard in the All-Star game, which I appreciated, and Jalen Duren. So I'm just really excited about, and Cade is 3rd in the entire NBA in clutch points. So Cade gets it done defensively, offensively, and in the clutch. And that's everything that you hope out of a young point guard that's taken a huge step forward. I always talk about how big he looks on the court when it comes to point guards. He's strong. He's athletic. He hit a crazy step back 3 and screamed in Jeremy Sochan's face at the end of the game. He was getting it done in every respect of the game. And then obviously he added 10 assists 13 assists just because he could. All in all, you have to be excited if you're a Pistons fan. I think you're absolutely in the running to win the NBA championship this year. And like I said, every year we think that the team that won the championship the previous year is just going to repeat, and it has not been the case in quite a while. There's been a young team that's really come out and taken it from the rest of the league, and this year, I think there's a very good chance that that team is the Detroit Pistons. So make sure that you continue to watch this squad. Make sure that you lock in, because the rest of this season is going to be a movie for the Detroit Pistons. That's all we got for you today. Appreciate y'all watching. Cyborg out.